The scene opens with a young Baek Rewan, his voice shattering the silence as he screams for his mother, desperate to know the truth. But his father confronts him with eyes as cold as ice, commanding him to silence his outburst and leave this instant. He issues a ruthless decree that this tragedy remain buried in the shadows, forbidding a single word from leaking to the outside world. The Baek family will not seek retribution. He claims this cowardice is for the greater good, warning his son against walking the path of vengeance alone. Baek Rewan stands frozen, his soul crushed by the weight of betrayal and disbelief. Tears of pure fury stream down his face as he screams at his father, demanding to know what kind of man refuses to avenge his own wife's murder. He condemns the patriarch as heartless, calling him a monster devoid of humanity. Declaring his departure, he severs all ties with the Baek clan, vowing he is no longer their kin. As he flees into the night, the bitter taste of weakness hits him. He swears to acquire absolute power that the heavens themselves cannot ignore. He resolves to forge his own path, establish a new sect, and gather an army to expand his dominion. Burning with determination, he etches the faces of his mother's killers and the cowards who stayed silent into his memory. He swears a blood oath to take revenge, no matter how long it takes. 12 years later, the wheel of fate turns. The scene shifts to a blazing inferno where a man screams in agony, admitting his fatal mistake and begging for the Murim Alliance to be warned. Groveling before a fully grown Baek Rewan, the desperate man offers the world in exchange for mercy. Surrounded by corpses and rubble, he insists his offer is priceless, but Baek Rewan simply stares back with terrifying calm. There is only one thing he desires. The trembling victim asks what that could possibly be. With a chilling smile, he replies, "Your life." The man panics, laughing nervously, as if it were a twisted joke, but Rewan clarifies that he will take it by force. Rage explodes in the man as he threatens to tear the protagonist limb from limb. In a flash, Baek Rewan materializes behind him, whispering that the villain's words are as filth-ridden as his soul. A single strike sends the enemy flying. The impact shatters the earth, carving a massive crater and choking the air with dust. The opponent howls, threatening to deliver Baek Rewan's head to the Murim Alliance, but it is too late. Moving faster than sight, Rewan cleaves him in two. Silence falls, and a graceful warrior approaches, addressing him as leader. She presents a tray delivered by a messenger. Baek Rewan, drenched in enemy blood yet smiling brightly, turns to the woman, Mo Young-jon. He thanks her for her patience, seemingly unbothered by the carnage around them. John hands him a scroll, coolly suggesting he wipe the gore from his face, though he dismisses the mess casually. Standing before the raging fire, he muses whether this destruction marks an end or a glorious new beginning. He tosses the scroll back, ordering her to deliver it to the Murim Alliance, along with his shocking announcement he is retiring. As they leave the ashes behind, John asks if he returns to his roots. He confirms that his ambitions within the Alliance are finally fulfilled. She asks if she might visit him once she lays down her own sword. He agrees with a smile, telling her to seek him out whenever boredom strikes. When she asks for his location, he points her toward Gyeong-ubei County. The scene shifts to Baek Rewan, drifting on a boat, reflecting on the passage of time. He recalls the day he abandoned his clan, joining the Murim Alliance to forge his strength in the fires of conflict. Through his self-created martial arts, he rose to the rank of leader, conquering the last 12 years with blood and sweat. A satisfied smile graces his lips. He is finally ready to establish a sect of his own making. He calculates his vast savings, excited about a perfect property. He found a mansion worthy of his legacy. Chuckling to himself, he believes the heavens are finally blessing his path. His laughter echoes over the water, prompting the old boatman to remark on his good mood. Rewan apologizes for the outburst, explaining he is en route to sign the deed for his future sect's headquarters. The boatman is impressed, noting how young he is to be a sect leader. But under his breath, the old man mutters that the only mansion for sale is the cursed haunted house. Rewan catches the whisper. The boatman quickly waves it off, wishing him luck. Rewan thanks him, oblivious to the warning. Confident that nothing stands in his way but a signature, he wonders what could possibly go wrong. Laughing once more. However, reality strikes hard. He stands before a dilapidated ruin, asking his broker, Jiren, if this is a joke. Jiren beams with fake enthusiasm, praising the sheer size of the wreck. Furious, Rewan seizes him by the collar, accusing him of a scam, while Jiren desperately tries to defend the indefensible. The broker insisted this location was a rare find, urging him to take a good look before making a final choice. As they toured the interior, Baek Rewan noticed the place wasn't just dirty, it was completely dilapidated, as if abandoned for decades. Uran continued his sales pitch, boasting that the property featured 45 rooms and 5 separate training grounds, 1 massive field and 4 smaller ones. The sheer scale of 5 training fields shocked him, prompting him to ask which powerful sect had previously occupied these grounds, but Uran feigned ignorance, claiming he was just a simple broker selling an old mansion. Baek Rewan felt tempted, calculating that with some hard labor, this ruins could be the perfect foundation for his own sect, but Uran hesitated, letting out a nervous sigh, which made Baek Rewan demand to know the fatal flaw hidden within these walls. Uran finally admitted it wasn't a major issue, aside from the terrified whisper that every single previous owner had died, a revelation that stunned Baek Rewan. He confirmed they all perished from sudden heart failure with absolutely no external wounds. Uran continued his grim explanation, revealing the chilling detail that every buyer died on their very first night immediately after, purchasing the deed, fueling rumors that the land was cursed by vengeful spirits. He added that even hired guards and Taoist exorcists were useless. Baek Rewan's eyes blazed with fury, wondering if this snake was deliberately trying to lead him into a death trap. The terrified broker immediately panicked, offering a massive discount and suggesting he would sell it for a mere 1/10 of the market value. He backpedaled further, accepting a measly 4 silver taels. Baek Rewan's mood shifted instantly, and he burst into boisterous laughter. He threw his arm around Uran's shoulder, handing over the pouch of money, declaring that if the price was this cheap, the broker should have led with that to avoid any misunderstanding. Uran slumped in relief, praising him, noting that such fearlessness was expected from the legendary former leader of the Blue Sky Unit, the squad famous for hunting ghosts. With trembling hands, he passed over the mansion's deed. Baek Rewan snatched the deed. As Uran turned to flee, he seemed to sense an ominous presence, but when questioned, he claimed it was nothing. Uran declared his business finished, joking grimly that if Baek Rewan miraculously managed to survive the night, he should come find him. Baek Rewan confidently assured him that he would. Once Uran vanished, Baek Rewan stood alone in the desolate courtyard and sighed. Suddenly, he shattered the silence with a roar of pure joy, screaming his overwhelming happiness at finally becoming the lord of his own domain. He sprinted inside with excitement, laughing maniacally, declaring that all he needed now were disciples to fill his new sect. He ground to a halt, staring at the mountains of debris and thick dust, realizing he had a massive cleaning job ahead of him. He wasted no time, immediately throwing himself into manual labor, scrubbing the floors and the endless corridors. He continued sweeping, telling himself he could rest once the main hall was pristine. He stood at the entrance of the grand hall, determined to hurry up and finish this final task. As he stepped into the darkness, he spotted something resting on a podium in the center. He approached it, wondering if the previous owner had left it behind. He lifted the sword, noting its exquisite craftsmanship and realizing it could fetch a high price, considering it a lucky bonus. The moment his fingers wrapped around the hilt, he felt a sudden vertigo as his sense of reality warped. He wondered where he was. A mysterious, glowing system interface materialized before his eyes, identifying him as an examinee, a martial artist whose objective was to establish a sect with a general rating, rank 2. The system indicated that this was the highest starting rank recorded among all previous challengers. Baek Rewan stared in shock, questioning his sanity. He looked extremely confused just as he instinctively dodged a lethal strike aimed at his head. The system announced abruptly that it was adjusting the trial's difficulty level. Baek Rewan immediately recalled Yuran's horror story about the owners dying on night one and realized this trial was the true cause of their deaths. A strange device descended from the ceiling as the system announced the test start. Difficulty level, extreme. Finding himself in a luminous testing space, he shifted into a combat stance, deciding to accept the challenge and face his destiny. The system announced the area as the Hall of Strength. He powerfully blocked a devastating attack and screamed a challenge, shouting, "Bring it on!" declaring he would prove to everyone he was not just an ordinary man, but the former commander of the Murim Alliance's Great Blue Sky unit. He adopted a martial arts stance and urged the trial to continue. The system responded by announcing the initialization of the Grandmaster Sect system. Suddenly, the illusion shattered, and he returned to the dusty main hall, bewildered and wondering what had just occurred. He ran out, shouted for Yuran. The next morning, Yuran appeared, sitting in his office, and when Baek Rewan saw him, he greeted him with a grin. With a chilling calm, he demands to know if anything strange occurred during the night. But then, the facade cracks as he bursts into Yuran's office. He seizes Yuran by the collar, eyes burning with uncontrolled fury. He screams in his face, demanding to know why he wasn't warned about the system's appearance. His voice cracks with desperation as he points to the floating blue status window that only he can see, this invisible phantom. He rants that this thing has been haunting him since last night, demanding an explanation. Yuran stares at him with cold, confused eyes, confirming he sees absolutely nothing. Yuran asks if he suffered a head injury. With a frustrated growl, the protagonist releases him. Yuran, ever the opportunist, seizes the moment. A sly smile plays on Yuran's lips as he offers to take the mansion back if it's too much of a burden. But our hero instantly refuses. He insists he still needs the estate. He must prepare for the Grand Sect opening ceremony, a task requiring immense preparation and focus. He begins listing his requirements, starting with uniforms. He needs 20 sets immediately and asks Yuran for the best fabric merchant recommendations. Yuran replies that he knows a few local shops, but his expression turns serious. He warns that conducting business won't be simple right now. He explains the market is in chaos, with everyone scrambling to gain favor with the Wangkreon Trading Company. It was a name that rang a bell immediately. Yuran confirms it is indeed the legendary merchant group that has supplied silk to the royal family for generations, but their reach goes further. Yuran describes the Wangkreon Trading Company's terrifying influence within the Murim world. They walk the line between light and darkness. They deal with both the orthodox and unorthodox factions. Their power is so vast that even the great clans tread carefully around them. Sipping his tea with infuriating elegance, Yuran mocks him. Given his pathetic budget, he shouldn't even dream of Wangkreon's luxury fabrics. They are completely out of his league. The protagonist admits the words are true, but the sting to his pride remains sharp. Yuran adds another blow, noting that merchants might hesitate to deal with the owner of a notoriously haunted mansion anyway. He advises him to stick to the common fabric district. Meanwhile, the floating system window flickers into existence. It complains loudly about being called a phantom pet. The protagonist snaps, ordering the digital interface to shut its mouth. Suddenly, he freezes. A realization strikes him like lightning. He only signed the mansion's deed yesterday. How could the rumors of the haunted mansion spread across the city so quickly? It was impossible. Yuran responds with a chilling proverb. Bad news has wings and travels faster than the wind. The protagonist's eyes narrow, his expression darkening as the truth hits. Yuran himself spread the rumors, and the traitor doesn't even deny it. He sighs, resigning himself to the chaos. At the very least, he decides to view it as free marketing for his new sect. Yuran trembles slightly, trying to justify his treachery. He claims the protagonist's survival proves the land is safe, so it all worked out. The protagonist explodes, screaming at him for cursing the mansion and inviting a storm of trouble to his doorstep. Later, on the fabric street, the reality sets in. A merchant looks at him with cold eyes and refuses to sell him a single thread. The shopkeeper slams the door in his face. He repeats the refusal while the protagonist begs him to just listen for 1 second. The merchant throws salt at him, ordering him to leave. He calls him the cursed ghost man, treating him like a plague carrier. As he retreats, the whispers of the crowd cling to him. He wonders how the rumors could spread with such terrifying speed. He forces himself to breathe, trying to maintain his dignity. People cannot think the heavenly healer has lost his mind. Suddenly, a commotion breaks his focus. He turns to see a brute manhandling a small child named So-hwa, who clings desperately to his leg. The boy screams through tears that the man promised to cure his sister. An old man rushes forward, crying out So-hwa's name in panic. The boy sobs to the elder that these warriors deceived him. They stole his money and refused to treat his dying sister. Rage flares in the warrior's eyes. He strikes So-hwa across the face with brutal force, shouting that the girl is beyond hope. He yells that even the doctors have abandoned her. The old man cries out in horror as the boy hits the ground. The elder steps in, trembling but brave. He recognizes their uniforms as members of a sect and asks how martial artists could bully a child. The leader of the group scoffs. He orders his subordinate to silence them immediately, ensuring this mess doesn't reach their sect leader's ears. The subordinate, a massive mountain of muscle, grins maliciously. He cracks his knuckles, the sound like breaking bones. He tells the trembling pair they should have been polite. Now he has no choice but to bloody his hands once again. The giant flashes a mocking, sadistic smile, preparing to crush the weaklings. But fate had other plans. Before he can move, a thunderous kick slams into his face. The impact sends the giant crashing to the earth, unconscious in an instant. The senior sect member stands frozen in shock. He screams, demanding the name of the attacker who dared to strike his man. The protagonist stands tall, radiating an aura of calm authority. He glances at the victims, then turns his cold gaze to the thug. He remarks that while his name might not ring bells yet, basic manners require an answer. He straightens his robes with confidence. He announces his presence to the world. I am Baek Rewan, the sect leader of the Heavenly Happiness Sect. The enemy roars in anger. Furious that a no-name clan dared to interfere with the great Baek sect, the elder launched a reckless assault. But Baek Rewan was faster. With a lightning-quick counter, he shattered the attacker's wrist in a single motion. Standing over the groaning trash, he delivered a cold lesson. Judging a warrior by their name, that is a fatal mistake. Especially, he added, his eyes narrowing, when you haven't the slightest clue about the power standing before you. Another lackey lost his temper. You dare defy the Baek sect? He roared, swinging wild steel. Do you even know who we are? Riwang didn't even blink. Do you realize what your ignorance will cost you? He slipped past the blade effortlessly. Asterisk, bam, asterisk. A simple backhand to the face sent the fool flying. No idea, he deadpanned. As the thug hit the dirt, the squad leader froze. A realization struck the leader like a lightning bolt. He stammered, trembling. The former Grandmaster of the Blue Sky Alliance? The one who bought the haunted ghost mansion? Riwang face-palmed hard. Asterisk. Great. Asterisk. The stunned goon asked, Is it really you? Riwang groaned internally, massaging his temples. Just how far had this stupid rumor spread through the Murim world? It was because of this nonsense that no tailor would even sell him a uniform. He clicked his tongue, annoyed beyond belief. Enough talk. Riwang glared at the Baek disciple. Stop gossiping like old washerwomen behind my back and fight me. The leader took the bait. You dare insult our sect? He leaped into the air, channeling his chi for a killing blow. Regret your arrogance. The clash was instant. The very earth cracked and shattered beneath the force of their collision. But Riwang danced through the storm of attacks like a ghost. Another coward tried to ambush him from the shadows? Pathetic. Riwang blocked without looking and delivered the finishing blows. In seconds, the mighty Baek disciples lay defeated in the dirt. Looking down at the humiliated leader, Riwang smirked. You wanted a challenge? You got one. He hefted the massive greatsword he'd looted. His eyes flashed with cold intent. If you want round 2, come find me at the Heavenly Bliss Sect. Anytime. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. But unless you want to witness true hell, I suggest you crawl away. Now? The thug scrambled away, screaming promises of vengeance. Wang dusted off his hands and turned to the civilians. You two alive? The boy, So-hwa, stared with stars in his eyes. Warrior. Then, realizing something, the boy jumped up. My sister! She makes amazing clothes! She can make your uniform! The boy bowed so low his head hit the dirt, desperation in his voice. Please! Save my sister! Wang scratched his head, awkward. Kid, I need a tailor, not a patient. Go find a doctor. Suddenly times, ding, asterisk. A blue system window materialized in the air. New business opportunity detected. Target potential, rank 3. Wang's annoyance vanished instantly. Rank 3? A greedy grin stretched across his face. That sounded profitable. Actually, he said, tell me more about this sister of yours. As they walked, So-hwa poured out his heart. Our parents passed last year. It's just me and my sister against the world. She's a genius with a needle, keeping us fed, the boy explained, his voice trembling. But then the sickness took her. A curse that turns her limbs to ice. Wang frowned, processing the information. A freezing disease? He glanced at the old man. And you, old-timer? How do you fit into this tragedy? The elder sighed. I run the fabric shop next door. I used to give the girl work, but when she vanished, I feared the worst. We're here, So-hwa announced. They stood before a rotting shack that looked ready to collapse if the wind blew too hard. So-hwa burst through the door. Sister, I brought a legendary ghost slayer to help you. Wang started to object to the dramatic title. Hey, I'm not a but the words died in his throat. What he saw defied all logic. Human hands plunged deep into a roaring fire, yet unburned. A young woman sat there, calm as a lake despite the flames. Who? She whispered. Wang stared, dumbfounded. She was putting her limbs directly into the fire. It was insane. Her condition was catastrophic. Much worse than he imagined. Asterisk ding, asterisk system analysis complete. Fire and cold energies are attempting to harmonize. It was a side effect of a yin-based internal energy overflow. He stepped forward, putting on his professional face. I'm here at your brother's request, to save you. Does the fire not burn you, he asked. So-hwa shook her head. No. If I don't do this, the cold will take my arms completely. The old merchant gasped in horror. Child, why didn't you tell us? She looked down, ashamed of her monstrous state. I didn't want you to see me like this. Wang knelt beside her. I need to check your pulse. Trust me. She hesitated, then offered her wrist. Please, hurry. As his fingers touched her skin, the system screamed a warning. Danger. Excessive yin energy absorption detected. He commands silence, his voice cutting through the air. The sudden authority leaves the old man bewildered. The system scan is complete. A catastrophic flood of yin energy has invaded her internal channels. He diagnoses her with the extreme yin constitution, a rare, cursed physique that endlessly devours cold energy from nature. It is the same legendary bloodline possessed by the Sword Queen, one of the 10 great celestials of the realm. So-hwa has never heard the name, yet the comparison to such a supreme being leaves her in awe. For a martial artist, this body is a divine gift, but for her, the excessive yin has become a deadly poison without yang to balance it. Then comes the devastating verdict. If this continues, her life force will extinguish in just 3 months. Sorrow washes over her. She expected this fate. But the elder explodes in protective fury. He accuses the protagonist of being a charlatan. But our hero warns that normal medicine will only feed the poison. As he frantically searches for a way to infuse stable yang energy, the system intervenes with a miracle. A new path opens. Completing the Essence mission will grant him the power to save her. The reward is Essence, a divine resource that can accelerate the recovery of his sect members. The shop reveals minor healing. For 50 Essence, it restores health and revitalizes internal energy instantly. Suddenly, a challenge quest appears: secure the first disciple. The reward is exactly 50 essence. His eyes light up. Fate has smiled upon him. He can save the girl and recruit a prodigy, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Excited, he turns to them, his eyes burning with determination. I have found a way. He looks directly at So-hwa and makes a life-changing offer. Join my heavenly bliss sect. She is stunned into silence. Become a disciple? Why would he want a dying girl for his clan? He simply asks for her trust. But hesitation grips her heart. The world of martial arts is foreign to her. She recalls how warriors speak of righteousness and honor, yet she believes it is all a lie. To her, they are hypocrites who claim to save the weak but care only for their own greed and power. Her parents died, caught in the crossfire of their senseless battles. Is this man any different? Will he pretend to help, only to use and discard her? Why force her onto the path she despises? But then, her gaze falls upon his hand. It is frozen solid from merely touching her yin energy. Despite the frostbite biting into his skin, he extends his hand with a warm, reassuring smile. If this pain is the price to cure you, his eyes seem to say, then I will gladly pay it. Her defenses crumble. She has no other choice. And for the first time, she feels she can believe in someone. With a heavy sigh, she surrenders to destiny. I will trust you one last time, she whispers. The moment she agrees, the system flashes gold. Quest complete. 50 essence secured. He wastes no time. Ignoring the ice on his hand, he immediately activates the minor healing skill. A brilliant halo of light erupts. So-hwa gasps as a gentle warmth floods her freezing veins. A confident smirk crosses his face. The system is absolute. The miracle has begun. As the healing energy integrates, her internal pathways expand, flushing out the deadly cold. He feels it too. His own yang energy, damaged by the frost, roars back to life, stronger than before. The system confirms total recovery. So-hwa stares at her own hands in utter disbelief. The black frost is gone. Her skin is flush with life. Her brother rushes to embrace her in tears. The elder is thunderstruck. Was that internal energy healing? The protagonist keeps his secrets close. Suddenly, the old man bursts into hearty laughter, his aura shifting from desperation to admiration. Magnificent, he roars. You are exactly the kind of dragon the world needs. He remarks that he now understands why the Murim Alliance leader values him so highly. The protagonist is confused. How does this old merchant know the supreme ruler of the martial world? The disguise drops. He is Chong Damong, the legendary master of the Wireon Trading Company. Meanwhile, darkness looms at the headquarters of the White Bear Sect. The air is heavy with bloodlust. The sect leader is furious, demanding to know how his men were humiliated by a newly formed clan. Mercy is not an option. The scene fades on the brutal screams of those who failed him. The sect leader stared down with eyes cold as ice, declaring that physical agony was a mercy compared to the shame that awaited him. He warned that the entire martial world would mock his failure. Without a shred of hesitation, he commanded his enforcers to drag the failures to the torture chamber. Their desperate screams for mercy fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, deep within the White Sword Sect's stronghold, a defeated subordinate kowtowed. He begged the sect leader, So-hwa, for one last chance at redemption. But the leader's mind was elsewhere, fixated on a single target, Baek from the Celestial Sword Sect. A sinister grin spread across his face as he plotted a grand welcome feast that would drip with venom. Back at the humble cabin, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken questions. Baek Rewan pierced the old man with a sharp gaze, finally voicing the suspicion that had been gnawing at him. He asked if the elder was truly the legendary head of the Yellow Dragon Chamber. The old merchant, Wan Rian, let out a hearty laugh that shook the air, shedding his disguise and confirming his true, terrifying status. Baek knew this man possessed hidden strength, but to think he was a titan capable of shaking the very foundations of the Murim world was a shock. Terrified, so hurriedly bowed to apologize for her earlier disrespect, but the merchant waved it off with a gentle, grandfatherly smile. His eyes then locked onto Baek Rewan, gleaming with opportunity. He extended a hand, offering him a prestigious position within the Yellow Dragon Chamber. He vowed to provide infinite resources and support. The weight of this proposal was heavy enough to crush a mountain. The Yellow Dragon Chamber was not just a guild, they were the lifeline of the royal family itself. Even the system flagged this as a grade A golden opportunity. Their coffers controlled countless grandmasters, granting them enough power to tip the fragile scales between the Murim Alliance and the demonic cult. A single command from this man could ignite a war or bring about an era of peace. He held the chaos of the Jianghu in his palm. It was a path to instant power, yet Baek saw a different destiny written in the stars. He bowed with respect, but his eyes remained firm. He declined the offer, declaring with a confident smile that he had just taken in his very first disciple, and his duty lay there. The merchant's brow furrowed, the air growing tense. Who would dare reject the Emperor of Commerce? It was an insult to the Yellow Dragon itself. Baek stood his ground but pivoted instantly. He proposed a gamble, a trade partnership that would benefit them both. In exchange for his refusal, he swore to gift the Yellow Dragon Chamber a level of prestige and glory they had never known before. Rage flickered in the old master's eyes. How could a nobody promise fame to the most renowned merchant under the heavens? It was sheer lunacy. But Baek doubled down with absolute conviction. He declared that within 10 years, his sect would stand equal to the 9 great clans and the 7 demonic gates. Is that not a fair trade? He challenged. The merchant scoffed, calling it the delusions of a madman. His sect didn't even exist on paper yet, but Baek's aura didn't waver. He spoke as if this future was already carved in stone. Silence stretched, until suddenly the merchant burst into roaring laughter. He had to admit, the boy had the heart of a dragon. Baek added a crucial detail. The fame he promised wasn't for the old master, whose legend was already written, but for someone else. He wanted to bet on the future of the chamber itself. He asked to meet the merchant's successor, the one who would carry the legacy. After a moment of deep calculation, the merchant nodded. The gamble was accepted. He promised to send his own disciple to Baek's sect soon. Whether the trade deal proceeded would depend entirely on the young successor's judgment. But his voice dropped an octave, delivering a chilling warning. If Baek's sect turned out to be a disappointment, the price would be paid in blood. Baek accepted the threat with a fearless grin. The deal was sealed. Immediately, the merchant shouted a command that echoed through the mountains. "Bring the silk!" Outside, the scene transformed as a caravan arrived, servants dropping to their knees in reverence to their master. It was a display of obscene wealth, a wagon overloaded with treasures, appearing as if by magic in the wilderness. The merchant presented a mountain of precious fabric to Baek, calling it a mere deposit, a token of gratitude for the most entertaining negotiation he had experienced in years. So-hwa and So-gu watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide at the sheer value of the gift. Baek accepted the tribute, realizing that beneath the merchant's silk robes lay the spirit of a true martial conqueror. As the merchant departed, he chuckled to himself. Baek's heaven-defying arrogance didn't annoy him, it reminded him of a reflection in a mirror. It was the same fire he once had. Feeling nostalgic, he turned to his guards, deciding to take a detour to visit an old monster. He commanded them to set a course for the demonic union. It was time to stir up the past. "It has been too long since I shared a drink with the demonic leader," he mused. Meanwhile, back at Baek's newly renovated sect headquarters, the place was transformed. So-hwa, holding a garment that shimmered in the light, shyly asked for his verdict on her handiwork. "It is perfection," he declared. As he donned the magnificent robe, the system chimed with a golden notification. Item acquired, heavenly silk robe. His stats for dignity and charm skyrocketed instantly, the fabric radiating a mystical aura. So-hwa beamed with pride, admitting her hands trembled, working with such divine material, yet her skill was undeniable. Baek moved through a few forms, the fabric flowing like water around him, while his disciple watched with stars in his eyes. Suddenly, another system window flashed before his vision. He had crafted a masterpiece, and now it was time to claim his legendary reward. A glowing reward window materialized before his eyes, offering 3 legendary paths. He could choose an advanced healing art, an elixir of god-tier talent, or unlock a unique trait. The elixir was tempting, but his instincts screamed otherwise. He selected the unique trait. The system chimed, announcing that disciple traits were now accessible. A status screen flickered into view, displaying the data for So-hwa. 17 years old. She was born with the legendary extreme yin body, holding infinite martial potential, yet her stamina was currently 0 due to a life of inactivity. 3 potential traits hovered on the screen: diligence, hardship, and responsibility. But suddenly, a crimson warning flashed. The disciple's internal energy was critically low. Access denied. Fury bubbled within him as the options remained grayed out. He could not select a single one. The cold mechanical voice of the system explained that the disciple must level up before her true potential could be unlocked. This was completely unfair, but he had no other choice. He would have to mold So-hwa into a warrior himself to break these seals. He turned to the girl, his voice stern. He announced that the real training would begin now. So-hwa trembled, anxiety gripping her heart. She wondered if a weakling like her could ever master the martial arts. She feared failing him. Then she remembered his promise. He had sworn that everything would be fine, that he would fix her broken destiny. Steeling her resolve, she decided to trust him with her life. Eyes shining, she asked what legendary technique she would learn first. He looked down at her and said 2 words: horse stance. Her face fell, visibly disappointed that it wasn't a flashier move. He explained that this was the foundation of all power. It was the only way to build her non-existent stamina. She needed to forge her body into a proper vessel first. She sighed and asked how long she had to hold the pose. A devilish grin crossed his face. "Just 1 hour," he said. Then he barked at her to begin. She wobbled, determined but hesitant. Doubts plagued her mind. She cried out that she had never done anything like this, asking if someone like her could truly walk the martial path. He cut her off, reminding her of her gift. Her body was a treasure that naturally accumulated internal energy. Even if it was yin energy, once she formed a core, she would be unstoppable. He watched her struggle, thinking to himself that she was a heavenly talent he could never let escape his grasp. Suddenly, Jiran burst onto the scene in a blind panic. He shoved a sealed letter into the master's hands. It was from the White Sword Sect. Jiran asked, terrified, if he knew their leader. The master took the letter, realizing the truth. These were the thugs he had thrashed just yesterday. In the background, So-hwa continued to curse them, calling them shameless scoundrels. He tore open the seal. It was an official invitation addressed to the Heavenly Sword Sect to participate in the Grand Martial Arts Tournament. Jiren's face went pale. He explained that the White Sword Sect was the tyrant of this region. Their leader was infamous for his short fuse. They had a dark reputation for dismantling smaller sects under the guise of friendly duels. It was suspicious that a giant like them would challenge a nameless sect. The master narrowed his eyes. Nameless? That was an insult he could not ignore. Jiran quickly backtracked, stammering that it was just a figure of speech. But the master only smiled. He understood the game perfectly. The enemy leader wanted to humiliate a rising sect publicly. How amusing. He declared this the perfect stage to announce their name to the world. So-hwa panicked, pointing out they were only 2 people. She would only be a burden. He looked her dead in the eye and dropped a bombshell. She was the one who would compete, and she would do it alone. The words hit her like a physical blow. She screamed in pure terror. Fight an entire tournament by herself? That night, So-hwa lay collapsed on the cold ground, every muscle screaming in agony. Her stamina was draining, and she hated the horse stance. She hadn't touched a sword all day. She was only doing the breathing exercises of a child. Anxiety gnawed at her. The tournament was less than 2 weeks away. What was her master thinking? She remembered his confident smile, telling her not to worry. But she needed answers. She dragged her exhausted body up to find him. She found his room lit up. He was awake, holding a needle and thread. He was sewing a garment, muttering that this was harder than any battle. So-hwa noticed he was talking to himself again. At that exact moment, a system window popped up. Warning, bleeding effect started from a self-inflicted finger prick. He hissed in pain and told the system to shut up. So-hwa watched silently from the darkness outside his door. He thought to himself that So-hwa would soon begin to doubt the monotonous training. He had to hurry. He needed to finish these special training robes before she lost faith. He held up the finished garment, a masterpiece for his disciple, hoping against hope that this gift reaches her heart. She is overwhelmed by his gesture, retreating into silence to hide her flustered emotions. Suddenly, a digital chime echoes. The system announces that So-hwa's responsibility trait is on the verge of a magnificent awakening. Caught off guard by the sudden notification, time flies. The fated day of the White Sword Sect's grand tournament arrives. At the registration desk, the atmosphere is tense. Officials grumble, questioning why a simple friendly match has escalated into a full-blown tournament. One whispers the dark truth. Rumors of their men being humiliated by the Heavenly Bliss sect have spread like wildfire. They realize the sect leader intends to use this stage as a public execution, a brutal lesson to warn other factions of the consequences of challenging the White Sword's dominance. One official sneers, mocking the outsiders for choosing the wrong enemy, but his arrogance shatters the moment he looks up. Standing before him are Baek Rewan and So-hwa. With an aura of ice-cold calm, she simply asks where to sign. The official is stunned into silence as the quill scratches the paper. He stares, his mind reeling, wondering if this obscure sect recruits disciples based solely on divine beauty, thinking she is absolutely breathtaking. But then he makes a snide comment about their humble robes, a distinct insult that ignites a spark of fury within the master. Flashback to the sect headquarters, Baek Rewan anxiously asks his disciple for her verdict on the new tunic. Though she admits the stitching is amateur at best, her eyes shine with genuine joy, cherishing the effort he poured into it. Back at the arena, the White Sword Sect leader, So-hwa, booms his voice across the field, declaring the start of the duel. He claims this is to foster brotherhood among the righteous sects. He adds that this stage belongs to the rising stars who will carry the future, and for them, he unveils a shocking reward. The prize is a lesser clarity pill. A collective gasp sweeps through the audience at the revelation of such a treasure. The system analyzes the item, a rare elixir refined by the legendary masters, capable of reinforcing the blood, perfectly stabilizing a warrior's energy center. So-hwa announces that the champion will claim this god-tier item, sending the crowd into a frenzy as they praise his immense generosity. As an attendant confirms the brackets are ready, the sect leader hides a serpentine smile. In his mind, he mocks them all as fools, vowing that after today, no one will ever dare look his sect in the eye again. He swears to demonstrate the terrifying gap in their power levels. The scene shifts to Area 3, the preliminary rounds. So-hwa trembles, nerves eating at her confidence. Baek Rewan steps in, his voice a grounding force, telling her to remember the hellish training. She panics, crying out that all she did was the horse stance. He looks her in the eye, commanding her to trust the master who forged her. He assures her that her body has evolved far beyond her own understanding. Taking a deep breath, she steps into the ring, doubt still lingering. The battle for Area 3 begins. She announces herself as So-hwa of the Heavenly Bliss sect. Her opponent steps forward, Cheon Saman, a third-generation elite of the Blue Moon sect. He sneers, immediately noticing not only her lack of battle aura, but her awkward grip. "You look like you've never held a blade in your life," he mocks. Flustered, she admits she has only been training for a single month. The opponent's grin widens into a predatory smile he vows to teach this rookie the cruelty of the martial world, signaling the referee. He stands tall, arrogantly telling her to strike with everything she has. In a blink, she vanishes. A thunderous impact echoes as she delivers a devastating blow, planting him into the earth. Before the audience can even process the movement, the referees are paralyzed, unable to comprehend a match ending in a split second. Baek Rewan smirks from the sidelines. Trust is the strongest weapon. The stunned official finally stammers the victory for the Heavenly Bliss sect. The master analyzes the triumph internally. For the past 2 weeks, he didn't just teach moves. He rewired her brain with the mindset of a true predator. He explains that striking with lethal intent is the hardest hurdle for beginners who fear hurting others. But So-hwa is different. She possesses the rare ability to unleash 100% of her power without hesitation. She rushes to her master, beaming with victory. He watches her, calculating that she will sweep through the main rounds effortlessly. He decides she no longer needs his hovering presence and wanders off, hunting for other potential threats in the tournament. The announcer calls the next match for Jinhwan of the White Sword Sect. The name radiates danger. Baek Rewan watches as Jinhwan dismantles his foe with terrifying speed. The opponent begs for mercy, admitting defeat, but Jinhwan ignores the surrender. His sword glows with a ferocious red aura, eyes burning with bloodlust. He delivers a brutal, bone-crushing strike to the defenseless man, who screams in agony. The referee finally intervenes, shouting that the match is over. Jinhwan is declared the winner, but the victory feels hollow. Baek Rewan watches with pure disgust, recognizing a monster who he resorts to dirty tricks. Even against an opponent he clearly outclasses. So-hwa runs toward him, radiating pure joy, exclaiming that she has finally reached the main tournament rounds. With eyes sparkling, she reports that she used her full power and secured an easy victory, just as her master predicted. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. A heavy, suffocating, killing intent washes over him. He traces the malice back to its source, the man known as Jinan. Looking at the bracket, the protagonist warns her that if they keep winning, a clash with that dangerous man in the main rounds is inevitable. Their conversation is cut short by a voice dripping with false courtesy. It is So-hwa, the esteemed leader of the White Sword Sect. So-hwa freezes in surprise. He offers a shallow apology for his disciples' disrespect the previous day. The protagonist responds with a cold, indifferent gaze. He claims it didn't bother him, but then his voice drops to a sarcastic drawl. He implies that the great leader's disciples simply lack discipline. The leader forces a smile, ignoring the jab. Instead, he turns his gaze to So-hwa. He praises her, calling it a miracle for a young girl to reach the main rounds. But then, the venom shows. He sighs that it is a terrible shame, that her next opponent is the formidable OEM. He declares her journey ends here. Then, eyeing her potential, he shamelessly offers her a spot in his own sect. The main character laughs in his face. He thanks the leader for the compliments, but deliberately twists the words to mock the man's judgment. He casually adds that the disciples of the White Sword Sect seem to be at least somewhat times useful. That single word somewhat shatters the leader's composure. Furious, he snaps his fingers and summons a massive disciple named Wanbal. He barks an order to escort our heroes to their quarters immediately. With a sneer, he tells them to enjoy the rest of the event. Wanbal mutters that they will, if fate allows it. As they walk down the corridor, Wanbal introduces himself as the first sword disciple of the sect. The system activates. It scans the 21-year-old. He possesses an exceptional muscular constitution and a genius talent for absorbing new techniques. He is truly a diamond in the rough. He leads them toward the guest accommodations. Suddenly, the protagonist stops. Without warning, he reaches out and begins gripping the muscles on Wanbal's shoulder and arm. A knowing smile spreads across his face as he praises the man's incredible. Wanbal is caught off guard. His face flushes bright red at the sudden compliment, and he stammers a clumsy thank you. Flustered, the big man quickly opens the guest room door and urges them to rest. He retreats hastily. So-hwa calls out her thanks to his retreating back. She turns to her master, ready to discuss her next dangerous opponent. But he deflects, asking for her thoughts instead. Then, his expression softens. With a gentle smile, he points toward the door. He tells her that the large man, Wanbal, reminds him of a younger brother who needs protection. She is stunned by this sudden display of empathy. The scene shifts. We dive into the dark past of the White Sword Sect. Leader So-hwa stands before a hopeful young boy. He demands a name. The boy, trembling with anticipation, confirms he is Wan Bal. The leader's eyes gleam with greed. He is captivated by the boy's monstrous physique and natural muscle density. He declares the boy a prodigy. He promises him a place as a disciple of the White Sword Sect. Wan Bal bows, his heart bursting with gratitude. But reality was cruel. During a training duel, he is utterly humiliated by a fellow disciple named Jin Hwan. Whispers spread through the crowd. They marvel that Jin Hwan crushed a senior 3 years his elder. Wan Bal lies broken on the ground. He gasps for air, looking up at his attacker. He pleads that this was only training, that there was no need for such brutality. The sect leader turns his back in disgust. He declares that he made a mistake. The young boy watches in horror as his idol abandons him. He calls him nothing but a hollow shell wrapped in good skin. With a voice like ice, he seals the boy's fate. He orders him to spend the rest of his miserable life cleaning up after his juniors. The nightmare ends abruptly. Wan Bal wakes up screaming, his body drenched in cold sweat. Terror seizes him. Jin Hwan is standing right there in his room. The bully smirks, noting that the sleeping giant is finally awake. He casually mentions he needs a warm-up partner before the tournament. Wan Bal trembles, pleading that he isn't feeling well today. Jin Hwan laughs. He dismisses the excuse as pathetic. He needs a punching bag, and he needs it now. His voice drips with venom as he insults the big man. He sneers that since Wan Bal's only asset is his meat shield body, he should at least make himself useful. Broken and defeated, Wan Bal hangs his head. He agrees to the abuse. Jin Hwan warns him to hurry up for a light beating and walks out, leaving Wan Bal drowning in despair. Meanwhile, back at the arena, the crowd roars. The referee signals the start of the semifinals. So-hwa's mind flashes back to a critical lesson from her master. Baek Rewan had warned her about OEM. His style is the treacherous ghost sword, a technique defined by deception and infinite variations. It is a nightmare to predict. However, high risk brings high danger. If the execution fails, it leaves a fatal opening. So-hwa had asked the obvious question, how do I stop it? He told her simply, don't get tricked. But then, a gleam appeared in his eye. He told her there was a much simpler path for a genius like her. He whispered a secret strategy, assuring her that if she trusts him, victory is absolute. She nodded with burning determination. Back in the present, Yurong rushes to the protagonist's side. She is breathless with amazement. She can't believe So-hwa actually made it to the semifinals. To achieve this level in just 1 month is unheard of. But the master simply smiles with terrifying confidence. He refuses her praise. He tells her to save her congratulations for when So-hwa wins the entire championship tomorrow. Yurong gasps, wondering if he has truly lost his mind. Within the arena, Ojion sneered at So-hwa, giving her credit for surviving this long, but promising her luck had finally run dry. With an arrogant smirk, he claimed that everyone in the stadium was eagerly awaiting her crushing defeat. She simply shot back with a fearless grin, telling him he was dead wrong because her sect leader had prophesied her victory, and his word was absolute. Ojon scoffed at her blind faith, spitting the words like master, like disciple, and calling them both lunatics. The referee signaled the start of the duel. So-hwa launched herself at her opponent, roaring that the victory would be hers today. The semi-final match between So-hwa and Ojion, the master of the ghost sword arts, had exploded into action. Watching from the stands, Ji-ran the bookie noted that the White Sword Sect disciples' footwork was on a completely different level. Suddenly, Ojion unleashed a deceptive strike using his phantom technique, mocking her and asking if she was ready to fold so soon. But her mind flashed back to the proply instructions of her master, Baek Rewan. If she could not distinguish reality from illusion, she must defend her center line at all costs. She dropped into a defensive stance, but Ojion's blade smashed through her guard, forcing her to stumble back under the pressure. Panic flickered in his eyes. He was genuinely shocked she had managed to block it. He admitted he had severely underestimated the girl. Now, he flared his spiritual energy to attack for real. He unleashed a complex ghost sword formation, striking at her from every angle simultaneously. The scene shifted back to her training memory, where Baek Rewan had explained the fatal flaw of the style. Users of the ghost sword were physically weak in direct combat and would always try to keep their distance. He assured her that as long as her weapon could reach him, the win was hers. Back in the present, Ojan continued to taunt her, but she snapped back that she was just getting started. Ignoring the phantoms, she charged straight in, executing her master's strategy perfectly. He kept up the illusionary barrage, laughing at her obvious movements while weaving in a real strike hidden among the fakes. She dodged the feints but slammed right into a heavy counterattack. Baek Rewan watched with intense focus as Jiran gasped in horror. She crashed to the floorboards. Ojan declared his win as she knelt there, gasping for air, her stamina completely drained. "I expected more," he said coldly, looking down on her, "but I guess you are empty." Fighting the pain, she forced herself up with extreme difficulty, screaming that it was not over yet. He scoffed, wondering what a girl who could barely stand intended to do. Suddenly, his eyes went wide. She was sprinting toward him with terrifying determination. He began to feel nervous, though he called it ridiculous. "One hit," she vowed. "This ends with one strike." She unleashed the basic ultimate. Form 2. Final cut. The blade connected with a decisive, thunderous impact. Baek Rewan smirked with pride as Jiran cheered wildly, celebrating the victory. However, one of the defeated White Sword disciples jumped up and protested loudly, claiming she had cheated by feigning defeat just to launch a cheap surprise attack. The crowd called him stubborn, but the disciple screamed in rage, unable to accept reality, asking how a senior disciple could lose to a girl like her without foul play. Baek Rewan stepped in, asking with a voice that froze the air if the White Sword Sect was always so lacking in etiquette, allowing a mere disciple to question a sect master. The terrified disciple scrambled back, trying to apologize. So-hwa, the leader of the White Sword Sect, quickly intervened to offer a formal apology for his student's rudeness, which Baek Rewan graciously accepted. However, the leader hinted at his displeasure, calling it unfortunate that Baek Rewan had arbitrarily declared the match over. But in the end, he had to swallow his pride and concede his sect's defeat in this round. The victory was officially announced for So-hwa, and the crowd erupted in murmurs of pure disbelief, wondering how a girl with only 1 month of training could possibly crush an elite disciple of the White Sword Sect. She waved excitedly at her master, screaming, "I won!" He praised her quietly, joking that Jiran was buying dinner tonight. But in the crowd, Wonbei watched So-hwa on stage, looking nervous, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Later, in the shadows, So-hwa gave Wonbei a dark order: poison So-hwa's food, specifically with a paralyzing agent strong enough to cripple her movements for tomorrow's match. He added that mere defeat was not enough. He ordered him to tell the violent disciple, Jin Hang, to break her limbs and leave her permanently disabled. Wonbei refused, trembling that he could not do such a thing, and received a brutal slap across the face. "You fool," the leader spat. "If you lack talent, you should at least have cunning." He struck him again, justifying that this weakness was exactly why his juniors were surpassing him. At that moment, a voice cut through the tension. The White Sword Sect leader is strict with his discipline," Baek Rewan mocked. Both the leader and Wonbei froze in shock. Baek Rewan smiled, offering a sarcastic greeting to his rival. Sect leader Seo Jones' eyes blazed with fury as he accused Baek of shattering martial etiquette by meddling in another sect's internal affairs. But the protagonist simply brushed off the killing intent, stating calmly that the sect leader's punishment of Wambal was far too excessive. The sect leader retorted that disciplining disciples was his heavenly duty, ordering the outsider to silence himself immediately. However, Baek smirked, revealing the true nature of his visit. He demanded that Wan Bal be handed over to the Heavenly Happiness Sect at once. Wan Bal froze, his jaw dropping as he pointed a trembling finger at himself in utter disbelief at this sudden twist of fate. With a devilish grin, Baek explained that the man's talents were being wasted here and would flourish far better under his own banner. C.O. Jones' face twisted in rage, convinced that Wan Bal had conspired with this outsider to refuse the previous order to poison So-hwa. Panic seized Wan Bal, and he frantically shook his head, desperate to deny the lethal accusation before he lost his head. A cunning glint flashed in the sect leader's eyes. He accepted the challenge, but declared that a price must be paid for such a request. He feigned sorrow at losing a disciple, then proposed a simple wager that would determine their fates once and for all. Meanwhile, a sudden chill ran down So-hwa's spine, unaware that the enemy leader was eyeing her immense potential like a hungry wolf. He decreed that the sect emerging victorious in the tournament would claim a disciple from the loser, a stipulation that terrified Wan Bal to his core. The thought of being a pawn in this high-stakes gamble sent shivers through him, but the trap had already been set. Without a second of hesitation, Baek accepted the terms, ignoring Wan Bal's desperate pleas to end this madness before it went too far. C.O. Jones scoffed, turning his back with a sneer, fully convinced that Baek's only disciple would soon belong to him. As the enemy departed, confident in their victory, Baek finally turned his attention to the shell-shocked disciple beside him. He asked Wan Bal if he understood the reason for his selection, his voice dropping to a tone of serious command. But Wan Bal could only stammer, asking in a panic if Lady So-hwa had any idea her life was being gambled away on a whim. Baek simply laughed, assuring him that So-hwa would be thrilled to have a junior brother to bully and mentor in the future. He declared that letting talent rot in the White Sword Sect was a crime, and now victory was the only option left on the table. Turning his gaze to So-hwa, his expression softened slightly as he asked the heavy question hanging in the air. He asked if she could grasp victory. She vowed to give her all, though a shadow of doubt still lingered in her eyes. She reminded him of his own analysis, that the odds were split evenly at 50-50 between life and death. But he cut through her doubt with a confident smile, declaring his absolute faith in her, fueling her fighting spirit to new heights. At that precise moment, a blue window materialized. The system announced the awakening of So-hwa's responsibility trait. Elsewhere, the White Sword Sect leader cast a menacing shadow over his disciple, Jin Wang, warning him against the sin of complacency. He demanded absolute victory, his voice cold as ice, stating that any further humiliation would be punishable by pain. Jin Wang smirked in agreement, even as Wan Bal approached to offer a word of caution about his deceptive opponent. The arrogance radiated off Jin Wang as he mocked his former senior, laughing at the idea of fearing a lucky beginner like her. He vowed to crush every ounce of her false hope. The atmosphere grew heavy as the final duel was announced to the crowd. The referee summoned the fighters. Jin Wang stared down So-hwa, his eyes filled with contempt for her miraculous run to the finals. He sneered that her streak of luck had run dry, but So-hwa stood tall, her aura calm as a still lake before a storm. The duel exploded into motion. Jin Wang expected a defensive strategy, but she defied all logic by charging straight into the kill zone. He gasped, forced to intercept a strike that carried far more weight and killing intent than a novice should possess. Steel clashed against steel. Jin Wang's eyes went wide as the impact reverberated through his bones, shaking his confidence. He couldn't comprehend how her internal energy was surging like a raging river, far surpassing his initial estimates. So-hwa recalled her master's teachings. Opponents would underestimate her, unaware of her extreme yin body's hidden potential. Her unique constitution was a natural vessel for infinite energy, and she unleashed a torrent of strikes upon him without mercy. Sensing an opening, she launched herself skyward. Jin Wang scrambled to react to the sudden death descending from above. She crashed down like a meteor. Though she hit the ground hard, Jin Wang was forced to admit she was no ordinary rookie. Enraged, he roared and launched a counteroffensive, screaming that she was nothing more than a bug to be squashed. She managed to parry the blow, but the sheer force sent her stumbling back, her footing compromised by the overwhelming power. He swore to end her existence in 10 seconds. So-hwa gritted her teeth, refusing to let her story end in defeat. As her will clashed with his blade, the system chimed again. Her responsibility trait roared to life, responding to her desperation. The interface confirmed the fusion of diligence and hardship, merging them into a new power born entirely from her sense of duty. From the depths of this fusion, a legendary attribute awakens, the unique trait known as clear mirror, still water. The system reveals its terrifying potential in the heat of life or death crises. Her perception and judgment are sharpened to a godlike degree. With this newfound clarity, she barely evades Jin Wang's lethal ambush. But the price is steep. Her weapon is stripped from her grasp. Panic claws at her throat. The killing intent radiating from him is suffocating, a heavy aura that threatens to crush her spirit. Jin Wang acknowledges her tenacity with a sneer, but his eyes promise destruction. He mocks her survival, questioning if she can withstand the impending doom. He channels a devastating amount of energy, preparing to obliterate her. As she braces herself, he lunges forward for the kill, screaming that her end has come. Baek Rewan's voice pierces the chaos, screaming her name in desperation. In that split second, his words echo in her mind the unwavering faith of a master who believes in her potential. Boom! A cataclysmic collision shakes the arena. Baek Rewan watches with his heart in his throat, while Yarang stands frozen in shock. Leader Seo stares trembling. He realizes she's using the legendary Cold Yin art. So-hwa unleashes the ultimate basic strike, third form, a single point of concentration wrapped in a biting frost that freezes the very air around it.